This video is predicting that the Denver Broncos will beat the Seattle Seahawks in this year's NFL Super Bowl on February 8th, 2026. This video is being recorded prior to the semifinals, the AFC and NFC championship games. The date that this video is posted on the social media platform you are watching it on proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, if for some reason the Seattle Seahawks do not beat the Rams in the semifinals, the Los Angeles Rams, it changes nothing regarding this video. This video that you are in this particular video that you are currently watching regarding the prediction for the Denver Broncos. The Seattle Seahawks has nothing to do with the content of this video and the prediction that the Denver Broncos will win the Super Bowl. So in other words, if the Denver Broncos beat the Rams instead of the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, it changes nothing regarding the significance of this prediction that is from God, and I'll, in this video, prove that this prediction is from God. Stay tuned. All right, this introduction of this video here is the same as the other video. If you've already watched the other video, you could skip ahead just a few minutes or something. I think it's about 9 minutes or so, but watch it again if you have already. Anyway, after this introduction, we'll get into new information for how it is known ahead of time that the Broncos will beat the Seattle Seahawks in this year's Super Bowl. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that the Denver Broncos will beat the Seattle Seahawks in the 2026 Super Bowl. This prediction, this video, is being produced prior to the AFC and NFC championship games. For those that don't know football, it means that this video is being produced prior to the semifinals. So there are 4 teams left in the playoffs. The Broncos and Seahawks are 2 of the 4 teams. It is predicted that each of these teams will beat their opponents in the semifinals and then play each other in the finals, which is the Super Bowl, and then the Denver Broncos will win. Okay, so that's a prediction for 3 outcomes of games here being made in one prediction, which is that the Denver Broncos will beat the Seattle Seahawks in this year's Super Bowl. As we can see here, this email was composed on January 19th. So this is before the championship games, the semifinals on the 25th. I think it's the 24th and 25th. Or maybe it's just the 25th, actually. Okay. Okay, so we can see here, January 19th. So the video also that you are watching on the social media platform you are watching it on, the post date proves this prediction is being made ahead of time. The purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is for a few main purposes. Number 1, it is to prove that God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is being explained on this channel. It is also for the purpose, this prediction that is from God, to prove that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God, as opposed to any other type of God. There are many people today that think that this word God can apply to anything and all religions lead to the same destination, etc. It's not correct, and this prediction will prove this. And also, this prediction will prove the controversial things that I am saying in this video, including what I have just said. And I know far better than anyone, and you, the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. I know far better than you the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction. And it is to prove the things that I am saying. And there is no debate regarding the controversial things that I'll be explaining. Now, the agnostic atheist will say, well, there's 4 teams left, it was quite possible that the Broncos and Seahawks would meet each other in the Super Bowl and the Broncos would win. That's not that big of a deal of a prediction, and that would be correct. That's true. But the reasons for this prediction and how it is known, the reasons that I will be explaining in this video, and I may make 2 videos. I might divide this into a couple of videos. The reasons for how this is known ahead of time are the proof that this is from God. No human being is capable of concocting these reasons in their own imagination. No person is that creative, as you will see. And if you don't see this, I am sorry for you, but you are a fool. But you are a fool by choice. And I know why you don't. And I understand where you're coming from, and I know that choice. You do not want the righteous Christian God of the Bible to be the true God. And fair enough. That's the purpose of life, in fact, is to make that choice. This is the reason why we are created in God's image, which is why we have free will. And our free will is to make this choice as to whether or not we want the righteous Christian God of the Bible to be the true God or not. This is why God has partially hidden himself. But I am here to help you with this prediction. I'm here to help open your eyes to what you have been blinding yourself all of these years. And really, to be honest, there is no excuse for not knowing that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. In fact, everyone knows this. There's no such thing as an atheist. Everyone knows. And even, well, I'll give you an example. Near-death experiences actually confirm this. People come back and they say, well, I just knew. I didn't need someone to stand in front of me and list out the things and the evidences and the explanation for God and all that. The spirit of that person just knew. And they knew that they had rejected God, right? Especially someone who is from a Christian or formerly Christian nation. They know what it's all about. Anyway, we'll get into subjects like that. Well, let me just add this. Contrary to what evangelical Christians will say, or most of them I should say, there are 3 camps. There are 3 places where people will be at after they die, not 2. It's not binary, heaven or hell. And also the evangelicals are not correct when they say there will be people that will be tortured forever in hell. No, of course not. And the agnostic atheist is correct in using that as justification for not believing, because obviously that would not be a good God. It is also contrary to the Bible. The Bible does not talk about a torturing forever of people. It, in fact, talks about a quote-unquote second death. Anyway, so there will be people that will die the second death. That's one camp. The 2 remaining camps are those that will pass from life to life and not go to the other place, the uncomfortable place. And the uncomfortableness of that place is different for each individual, depending on what they did and how they responded to God, etc. Okay, and then so there are the middlings. So this is the vast majority of people. The people that, for example, were born before Christ, the people, and not necessarily, there will be some that were born before Christ that passed from life to life. But what I'm saying is that there will be people in that camp, also people in our time that didn't have an opportunity or a full opportunity to receive the gospel. For example, people in many nations that are barely Christian evangelized, just for example. But when it comes to the Westerner, someone who is, for example, from North America, and they still have rejected God, especially if they are over the age of 20, because today the gospel has, in the generation Y, Z, you would call it, they've barely received the gospel like people in other countries now, right? Anyway, you get my point. The one's judgment is commensurate with the amount of light and truth that that person was exposed to in their life. So be warned. If you are, for example, a baby boomer from the West, and you have rejected God and you are still an agnostic atheist, even though the evidence, including scientific evidence, because of course materialism is a far long ago outdated ideology. I mean, even early 20th century science disproved the 19th century idea of materialism. Anyway, if you have succumbed to that propaganda of materialism, well, you're being warned, and that's what this video is for. Let's get into these reasons, which you will clearly see are from God, and if you can't see that, I don't know what to say to you, but you will see. No one is creative enough. These explanations will be amazing, and no one is creative enough to have concocted this of their own self. It is predicted that the Denver Broncos will win this year's Super Bowl in San Francisco. This prediction is being made, as we can see here. This email was composed on January 24th. This precedes the AFC Championship game between the Denver Broncos and the Patriots. Okay, so in other words, this is the semifinals, the AFC Championship game on Sunday, January 25th. And so this prediction is being made ahead of that game, which Denver is predicted to win. And then they're predicted to go on and win the Super Bowl. Regardless of who plays the Broncos in the Super Bowl, well, what I mean to say is that it seems likely that the Broncos will play the Seattle Seahawks, but that's irrelevant to what I am getting at here with this prediction. It's part of the prediction. It's another separate prediction that the Denver Broncos will play the Seattle Seahawks. Regardless, sports betting odds currently have the Denver Broncos to win the Super Bowl at 12 or 13 to 1, which is quite low odds given that there are only 4 teams left. In other words, the other 3 teams left in the playoff picture have odds ranging from 2 to 3 to 1. The reason for the 12 or 13 to 1 odds is that at the end of the last playoff game, the Broncos' star quarterback got injured for the rest of the season, and now the Denver Broncos are playing with their backup quarterback. Little does the odds betting world know that this backup quarterback is extremely prophetic. And I explain this a little bit in this video, but also in another video. Anyway, we can see here this prediction is documented on January 24th, the post date of the video you are watching. The post date of the video of this video that you are watching, the post date of this video on the social media platform you are watching it on also proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time. This video will be truly, what are the words to describe this? What I'm about to explain is so profound, there's no words to describe it. That's because the reasons that I'll be explaining for how this prediction is known in this video will clearly be from God. you will clearly understand and perceive that no human is creative enough to come up with these profound, truly profound explanations, or rather, connections between prophetic signs that confirm that the Denver Broncos will win this year's Super Bowl. And therefore, because no one is that creative, it proves that these reasons that I'll be explaining are from God, which therefore proves that this prediction is from God. Because the agnostic atheist will correctly claim that, well, 12 to 13 to 1 isn't nothing. A 1 in 13 chance that the Broncos will win the Super Bowl is not much of a prediction. And that would be correct. However, what makes this impossible to be a coincidence, this prediction, or if you will, luck, what makes that impossible? That conclusion that I got lucky, or this prediction will be lucky. What will prove this conclusion to be 100% irrational, or the explanations that I'll be providing in this video? You will see. Stay tuned. You will see what I mean here. You will see that clearly how can I put it with just words? I want to emphasize that the things that I'll be talking about in this video will make it clear that this prediction for the Broncos to win the Super Bowl are from God. And to reach any other conclusion means that any other conclusion is completely irrational. Any other conclusion that this is a coincidence is foolish and makes this person a fool. So let's get into it here. In Bible prophecy, the 6th chapter of the book of Revelation, or in this 6th chapter, the Antichrist rides a white horse. The first Pope mobile was a white Ford Bronco used by Pope John Paul II during his visit to the U.S. The Broncos, whose logo uses a white horse, and there is a giant statue of a white horse on the top of the stadium that the Broncos play in, are predicted to win Super Bowl 60. Super Bowl 60 hints at the 6th chapter of the book of Revelation. The White Horse Broncos team hints at the Antichrist who rides the white horse in this 6th chapter of Revelation, and that's why the White Horse Team Broncos will win this 60th Super Bowl. Pope Francis's last day in the U.S. in his tour was in Philadelphia on the date 9/27, September 27th, 2015. This is amazing because of Daniel 9:27, the last verse of the most central prophecy in the Bible that describes the period of the Antichrist. So, and of course, America is important, and the second of the two Antichrists, furthermore, is the second Antichrist, who is the president of America. Not currently, but will be. And was. So the Pope's last day in America is extremely important. It's relevant. And it was in Philadelphia, furthermore, which is a city named in the Bible in the book of Revelation, in the end times book. The Church of Philadelphia is one of the 7 churches that Jesus wrote letters to in the book of Revelation. That's why the Pope was in Philadelphia and why it concluded his U.S. tour. But his tour his time, if you will, in the U.S. concluded on the date 927, which regards in the book of Daniel, verse 927, a period of time regarding the Antichrist. And that period of time is a 70th seven. Okay, without explaining it, it's a 70th seven. And Philadelphia is one of the 7 churches in the book of Revelation. In other words, the fact that the tour concluded in Philadelphia, one of the 7 churches, is more confirmation of the prophetic significance of the date. He was last in America on 9/27. Now this date, 9/27/2015, was exactly the 42nd semi-prime number of weeks before Philadelphia won their first Super Bowl. This is a period of time, 42nd semi-prime number of weeks, which incidentally is 123 weeks. Exactly. In Bible prophecy, a period of 42 months is mentioned 7 times as being symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. And so we have the Antichrist's last day in the U.S. in Philadelphia, connected with an exact 42 semi-prime number of weeks, a semi-prime number being a number only divisible by 2 other prime numbers, to this other significant date involving Philadelphia. The day that Philadelphia won their first Super Bowl. And God uses firsts for prophetic signs, not least of which the first black president, who incidentally delivered a prophetic speech in Philadelphia when he was running to be the first black president. That Super Bowl is known for the most famous trick play in Super Bowl history, when wide receiver number 88 threw the ball to the quarterback, Nick Foles, for a touchdown. Okay, this trick play in which the quarterback handed the ball to the running back, who then tossed the ball to the wide receiver, number 88, who then threw it back to the quarterback, Nick Foles, who went in for a touchdown. Right before halftime. This is known as the Philly Special. It's the most famous trick play in Super Bowl history. Nick Foles, the name Foles hints at horse, because a foal is a type of horse. The Philly Special hints at filly, a type of horse. So the Philly Special was the name of the trick play to the quarterback named Foles, and filly and foal are types of horses. The MVP of the game was the 88th player selected in his draft, the quarterback. In the Philly Special, player number 88 threw the ball to the quarterback, who was selected 88th in his draft. And after that Super Bowl win, he signed a contract for $88 million. His name is Foles, and foal is a type of horse. 8 years after this Super Bowl, involving the Philly Special player number 88 and the 88th player selected in his draft, it is predicted that player number 8 for the White Horse Broncos will win the MVP award in the Super Bowl in San Francisco. That's because Pope Francis, which is hinted at with the name San Francisco, died at the age of 88. Okay? Do you see how amazing this is? Now, it's the Broncos in San Francisco. Broncos are horses. San Francisco hints at Pope Francis. Pope Francis died at the age of 88. In this Broncos Super Bowl in San Francisco, it's predicted that player number 8 will be the MVP 8 years after the MVP was the 88th selected in his draft, who received a throw from the wide receiver number 88, and who then signed an $88 million contract. So 8 years from that to the predicted number 8 MVP gives us 2 8s. 8 years to player number 8 in San Francisco, which hints at Francis, who died at 88. And furthermore, again, that Super Bowl, that was 8 years before this predicted win by player number 8, that Super Bowl in 2018, a year ending in 8, in which Philadelphia won their first Super Bowl, was exactly the 42nd semi-prime number of weeks after Pope Francis was in Philadelphia on the last day of his U.S. tour, on the date 9/27. And you get the idea here. In other words, Pope Francis's U.S. tour connects to the Super Bowl in the U.S. in San Francisco. This is the Pope Francis Super Bowl, and this proves this. And if you think that I somehow created this out of my own imagination, all of these connections, I feel sorry for you. Because the truth is, you are willfully being irrational. And why is that? Well, we know why that is. Because everything is spiritual, and you insist on rejecting God. You know the implication of this not being a coincidence. It means that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God, and you detest that idea. The idea of praying to a God every morning or something to that effect, and thinking about God and being responsible for your actions, etc., you find that icky. You do not like that idea. That's the truth. It's an emotional thing. It's not a rational thing for you. You are making a decision, which is the purpose of this life. The reason why God has partially hidden himself and provided the overwhelming evidence in every direction, including scientific evidence, like overwhelming amount of scientific evidence that these so-called agnostic atheists claim means that there's no God, they couldn't be further from the truth. They are living, in fact, in 19th century science, this new idea called materialism that's long ago outdated, but persists due to propaganda and the desire for there to not be a God. And so they make their choice. And when this prediction comes to pass, and now that you've heard this paragraph, there's no excuse for you. Well, there wasn't anyway, to begin with, because near-death experiences show that when people get there, the other side, they don't require someone to, list all the evidence for them and show them where they were wrong. They all know that there was a God that was the God of the Bible, and they know that they rejected him. There's no explanation needed. In other words, there's no such thing as an atheist. Everyone knows, deep down, spiritually. But there's those that refuse to accept it. And instead, by default, rebel. I mean, that's what it means to not accept it. It means to rebel. So, I think it's pretty clear. I think I explained this paragraph well enough. If you want, I suppose, listen to this again, a second time. But there's no way, there is no way that this could have been concocted in an imagination. This is all real. The 88th player selected in his draft received the pass in the Philly Special, a type of horse. You get the idea. It's clear. There's no excuse. 13-1 odds, schmods. It doesn't matter. Even if it was 1,000-1 odds, the agnostic atheist would have a claim that, well, you just got lucky. But all of that's irrelevant with this paragraph here. This paragraph changes everything. I hope you appreciate this, because if you continue to refuse the evidence, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if this doesn't wake you up. I don't know what will. Hopefully something will. God has his ways, right? I have no idea what he might have in store for your life to wake you up, if he so chooses to. Now, let's move on, because we are actually just scratching the surface here. Before we move on, I want to make something else clear. Well, actually, I'll finish up the agnostic atheist part and then move on to something else here, which is that agnostic atheism is a religion. It's a worldview, and all worldviews are religions, and they all have their core belief. The core belief of, for example, Christianity is that there is a personal God that created the universe, right? The core belief of Hinduism is that God is an impersonal energy and God is the universe itself, and we as people are a part of God, etc. It's a completely opposite, different God than the God of the Bible. Well, anyway, the core belief of, and that by the way is called pantheism, which is in complete contradiction to what is called monotheism, which is Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. The core belief of agnostic atheism, which is just as much a religion as any other religion, in fact, it is a fundamentalist dogmatic religion, and the followers are more fundamentalist than anything that they would criticize as being a fundamentalist Christian, for example, because it requires far more faith to believe the nonsense of agnostic atheism than it does to believe the Bible, or to believe that there is a God, an intelligent designer of the universe, a personal being God that is separate from the creation, that isn't the creation itself. The difference between the Eastern pantheism and monotheism. I mean, the word holy means separate from. So the holy God is separate from and not part of his creation. He created the creation, right? It's different than being the creation itself, which was disproven when we discovered the Big Bang, incidentally. Hinduism and Eastern religion and the New Age religion have long ago been disproven. But anyway, the core belief of the agnostic religion is that, well, there may or may not be a God. I don't know, but there is no evidence for God. That's the core belief, even though there's an overwhelming amount of evidence. Like serious, clear, obvious, indisputable evidence, including clear, obvious, indisputable scientific evidence. All right? But despite that, they fanatically continue to hold on to their core belief, which underpins their religion and their life, which is that there is no evidence for God. And we'll find out when we die. But there's no evidence for God. I mean, it's such a dogmatic belief. What can I tell you? I've made my point. And so I've also made the other point at the same time, which is that this prediction proves that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God and not any other combination or any other God. Not the Hindu God and not the God of the confused New Agers that are Westerners but subscribe to many Eastern ideas and have come up with some kind of concoction that's a contradiction and cognitive dissonance between their beliefs about the nature of God. In other words, what I'm saying is that there are many people today that in 1 minute will say, yeah, I believe like the God of the Bible, but then in the next minute they'll talk about Eastern ideas like reincarnation and God being an energy and being the universe itself. They don't even understand their own contradictions and cognitive dissonance. And why do they do that? Well, because they want their cake and eat it too. They don't want to be accountable for sin, but they still like the idea of there being a God and protector and someone who they think is overseeing their life, etc. A being. But when it comes down to whether they're going to be judged, well, then they switch to, well, God's an energy and I'm part of that God and I don't want to feel any shame, etc. And they're deluded and they're not going to the good place for this delusion. They're still in rebellion. They still have not, they've still not repented and asked for forgiveness for their sin, in other words. And that means that they are still in the camp of the original sin, which is independence from God. That's the thing. They want the God of the Bible, but they want to still be independent. That's the thing. They still want to be a goat, which can't be herded and go their own way, hence the metaphor of the sheep and the goats being separated, which is the reality of what is going on in this life. It's a process of separating the sheep from the goats. Only the sheep follow the shepherd. The goats go their own way, and that includes New Agers that think that they know God, but in fact are often deluded by demonic spirits. For example, when it comes to supposed supernatural, and not supposed, but literally supernatural experiences that they think confirms their worldview for them. That's another subject, but it's demonic. Because, as the Bible says, they get the deception they ask for. But let's move on, because we got a lot more here. King Apollyon is described in the fifth trumpet of judgment in the book of Revelation, in verse 9-11. This fifth trumpet of judgment alludes to the demonic powers and possession of people's bodies that will soon come for those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing. And you know what I'm talking about. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the dead through demonic power. So if you were wondering how in the world I could be saying that Pope Francis is the Antichrist, well, that's because he will be resurrected in April of 2029 through demonic power. He will be King Apollyon's representative. The first use of a Pope mobile was when Pope John Paul II used a white Ford Bronco in New York City, which is where the events of 9/11 occurred. There's a pattern here. Revelation 9/11 and 9/11 on 9/11, in 2001 I should say, are related. That date of the first Pope mobile of a white Bronco, as in a white horse, the Pope being the Antichrist, because all popes throughout all of history have been lowercase a Antichrists. And no, to the conservative Catholics, no, it's not the issue that we have currently a bad Pope or some bad cardinals. No, no, no. I'm sorry. The office of papacy is in itself blasphemy. The Old Testament is very clear that the Pope would be the Antichrist, even before there were popes. And you don't know that because Catholics just don't know the Bible in general. So, conservative, Catholic, whatever, you probably don't know the Bible. But you most likely don't know Bible prophecy, which clearly identifies a pope as being the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 9. It says the Antichrist, for example, will be of the people that came and destroyed the city and the sanctuary after the crucifixion of Jesus. Daniel chapter 9. Well, the Romans came in 70 AD, shortly after the death of Jesus, and destroyed the city and the sanctuary, and popes are the descendant rulers of the Romans. But that's just scratching the surface of the evidence in Bible prophecy for the Pope. There wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation without this knowledge, which has been conveniently lost in the last 50 or so years, right before the end, in order to fool the most amount of people, including Protestants. And it is actually shameful that evangelicals don't know that the Pope is the first of the two antichrists. Like, literally, it is shameful. Because it's such a ignorance regarding basic Bible prophecy. I mean, basic Bible prophecy. It's shameful. It's disgusting. And the root of that is their heretical salvation doctrine that they employ to interpret 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, which causes them to continue to play the Antichrist guessing game because of their belief that the identity of the Antichrist is not possible to know. Which is silly, but it's worse than silly because it's related to their heretical salvation doctrine. The Nicolaitan doctrine of our day that Jesus said he hates and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth of those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine. Paul was not talking about the Holy Spirit in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 that was holding back the Antichrist. He referred to this as a he and a what that was holding back the Antichrist. Well, why would he refer to the Holy Spirit as a he and a what? And why did he speak cryptically? And why did he say earlier in that same chapter that the Thessalonians knew what he was talking about? Why didn't he just speak plainly? Well, the reason is because anyone in possession of the letters would have been in great danger had he been speaking plainly in the letter. Because the he and the what that the Thessalonians knew was the what being Rome, the capital, being moved by the he, the Pope, the Emperor Constantine, who moved the capital from Rome to Constantinople, thus clearing the way for the rise in power of the bishops of Rome, which eventually became popes, leading to the ultimate pope, the Antichrist, Pope Francis. But again, all popes throughout all of history have been lowercase a antichrists. Catholicism, God absolutely hates. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying God hates Catholics or that they won't be saved, some of them. But it'll be in spite of their Catholicism, not because of it. Because when Rome converted to Catholicism, it didn't do away with its pagan traditions. It just repackaged them in a wrapper to make it look like Christianity. And the thing that God hates most in the Bible, which Catholics don't know very well, is the mixing of the true religion with the false religions of the pagan neighbors of the Jews. And they were constantly being chastised for it and ultimately exiled to Babylon, which became a metaphor for pagan religion, which is why Peter in his writings in the Bible referred to Rome as Babylon. And no, Peter was never in Rome. And there is zero evidence that he was. In fact, he called Rome Babylon. And Paul wrote to people in Rome and never mentioned Peter. He addressed his letters to the people that were in Rome, and not once did he mention Peter. Because Peter wasn't in Rome. Why do Catholics need Peter be in Rome? Well, that gives them the authority, supposedly, to make up all this man-made religion on top of the Bible through supposed descendants of Peter, popes. Even though at one time in history there were 4 popes, for example. Anyway, that's enough of that subject. But what was I talking about here? We're talking about the Pope Mobile. Were we talking about the Pope Mobile? No. Yeah, we were. The first use of a Pope Mobile. So this Pope Mobile, which was a white Ford Bronco, as you might imagine, is a metaphor for the white horse. Because it's a Bronco. It's a Bronco vehicle, right? And it's white. And it's the Pope, the Antichrist, riding in it. Because the Pope is the Antichrist. Oh yeah, the one last thing I wanted to say is the problem is not popes, it's Catholicism, which supposedly comes from the authority of popes. The whole Catholic religion hinges on one verse from the Bible, Matthew 16:18. When Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do you think I am?" And Peter was the first to say out loud that Jesus is the Christ. And then Jesus responded to Simon, Peter's name was Simon before it was Peter. Peter responded after Simon said this, Petros. He called him Peter. He said, "Simon, you are Petros. And on this Petra, I will build my church." Well, in Greek, Petros and Petra are two different words. They have different meanings. Petros means rock or stone, and Petra means bedrock. Which is what structures are built on. When Jesus said he was going to build his church on Petra, this Petra, he was referring to this rock of truth. The bedrock, the foundation of his church is that he is the Christ, not Peter. Jesus didn't say he was going to build his church on a man. That's blasphemy. He said he was going to build his church on the truth that Peter had just said, which is the reason for the difference in the Greek terms, Petros and Petra. But the thing is, the entire Catholic religion hinges on this one verse. When this one verse is disproved, the entire Catholic religion is disproved. In other words, Catholicism is not a legitimate denomination of Christianity. It isn't Christianity. Obviously, it is massively different than any other form of Christianity, and it is because of the centuries of man-made tradition also inherited prior to Rome with the pagan traditions that were just repackaged, which God hates the most. The mixing of true religion with pagan religion, and that is the definition of Catholicism. For example, the worship of Mary is carried over from the worship of the fertility goddess in the Bible. From ancient times. The ancient artwork for the fertility goddesses is the same as the Mary with her baby, the Madonnas or whatever. The Isis, Aphrodite, Ishtar, all of that. It's Mary worship. Same thing. Fertility goddess worship. St. Peter's Square. What is it? It's circular. There's a circular column on the outside. There's columns in a circular pattern on the outside with a big obelisk standing upright, erect in the middle. That's ancient world symbolism for fertility. The obelisk being the symbol for the phallus, the male symbol, and the circle being symbolic of the womb, the vagina. The Pope's funny hat that he wears, the big pointy hat. If you look at it from the side, it's a fish head. And it has tails on the back. That's the fish tails of a fish head. Why does a Pope wear a fish head hat? Because it's carried over from the priests of Dagon, the worship of the fish god. And they used to also carry that staff that the Pope now carries. The priests of Dagon carried a crooked staff like the Pope now carries, with the fish head hat. Why did the ancients worship the fish god? Because in the ancient world, the fish was symbolic of fertility, because it's shaped like a vagina. Anyway, that's just scratching the surface of symbolism. But all of the religion created over the centuries, there's no authority for. And when you understand Matthew 16:18 properly, it disproves the Catholic religion. Okay, there's no excuse. Now, the thing about Catholicism is that Catholics are constantly having supernatural experiences to confirm their beliefs. But the truth is it is demons doing this to confirm their beliefs, because as 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 says, we get the deception we ask for. For those that want to see aliens and believe in UFOs and all that and go out and look for them, well, the aliens find them, but the truth is that they're demons. If you really believe Mary is the Queen of Heaven and you pray to Mary and all that, well, you're going to be visited by Mary. But it's a demon. I'm going to give you one last example here before I move on. I had a friend who was Catholic or is Catholic or whatever, and she told me of an experience where her and a group of her friends or who, whatever, a group of hers was in a cathedral, and the bread that the Catholics take that they believe gives them their salvation, more blasphemy, as is the constant re-crucifixion of Christ on a daily basis, but they believe the piece of bread gives them their salvation. So anyway, when they were in the cathedral, they witnessed together the bread levitate off the table. And I have no reason to disbelieve this person that told me this. I believe it. I believe her 100%. I can actually see that happening, but I also know that person's character. And anyway, that's that because I know that this happened because this is the nature of how things work. This is the reality, right? The only thing is, there are two explanations. Which one is true? One explanation for why the bread levitated off the table is that it was angels encouraging them to take more pieces of bread for their salvation. Or it was demons levitating the bread off the table in order to encourage them to take more pieces of bread for their salvation. Right? Those are the two explanations, obviously. And the latter one is the truth. But that's just typical. Catholics are always having these confirmations like this. But it's demonic. They don't really know the Bible. What they know is their supernatural confirmations. Or other Catholics that have had them, including famous examples. But that's why the Catholics are also obsessed with these sorts of things. They're obsessed with them, like these supernatural phenomena, right? The statues of Mary crying and stuff like this, right? They're obsessed with this stuff because they don't really care about the Bible. They don't care about God. They care about their superstition about God, but not really God. And they interpret these things as confirmation for their superstitious beliefs, which has nothing to do with Christianity or the Bible. Well, anyway, it's the same with the New Agers. You can extrapolate everything I just said and apply it to New Agers and their beliefs about God and how their supernatural confirmations or experiences confirm for them their worldview about what God is, etc., and how God is a part of their life. But the truth is, they are also demonic experiences. All right, so back to what I was saying here. I'm talking about how King Apollyon is described in the fifth trumpet of the book of Revelation in verse 9:11. The fifth trumpet alludes to demonic possession. Pope Francis will be resurrected through demonic power. King Apollyon, Revelation 9:11, is the Antichrist is King Apollyon's representative. The first use of the Pope Mobile was when Pope John Paul II used a white Ford Bronco, as in a white horse, in New York City where the 9/11 events took place, as in Revelation 9:11, as in Pope Francis being resurrected from the dead and being the representative of King Apollyon. The date of this first Pope Mobile was October 4th, 1979, and this was exactly 555 months before the San Francisco 49ers beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the prophetic playoff game on January 4th, 2026. Not long ago. I forgot to mention that the 555 months hint at the fifth trumpet, judgment. Okay? Now, the final score of that game on January 4th this year summed to 42. It was 19-23. Total points being 42, which in Bible prophecy is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist, 42 months. And the Antichrist is Pope Francis, which is what the name San Francisco hints at, and San Francisco won this game. San Francisco beat Philadelphia. Pope Francis's, as in San Francisco, last city on his U.S. tour was Philadelphia. When Pope Francis was in the U.S., he used a Pope Mobile, which was a white Jeep Wrangler. A Wrangler is someone in charge of horses on a ranch. So the first Pope Mobile by the Pope John Paul was a Bronco, a white Bronco, and Francis used a white Wrangler, which is someone who is in charge of horses. Now, 2 times 2 times 7 days after San Francisco beat Philadelphia, it is predicted that quarterback Jarrett Stidham will lead the Broncos to victory in the Super Bowl in San Francisco against the team from the 42nd state. Okay, so we have the game that summed to 42, connected with 2 times 2 times 7 days to the predicted win of the Broncos against the team from the 42nd state, the Seattle Seahawks. The name Stidham means homestead or ranch. A homestead or ranch is where horses are kept and looked after by a wrangler. The reason for this connection of 2 times 2 times 7 days is that this hints at the number 227, which is the 49th prime number, which is why the San Francisco 49ers beat Philadelphia 2 times 2 times 7 days before the predicted white horse Broncos win of the Super Bowl led by Stidham. The first Pope Mobile, a white Ford Bronco, connected with 555 months, as in fifth trumpet, to the 49ers game. And then 2 times 2 times 7 days, which is the 49th, which hints at the 49th prime number, to the predicted Broncos win led by Stidham, which means ranch of horses in San Francisco, which hints at Pope Francis, who used a Pope Mobile in Philadelphia. And popes riding the white Wranglers and Broncos hint at the white horse being ridden by the Antichrist. In other words, the first Pope Mobile connects to this Super Bowl. In other words, the first Pope Mobile, a white Ford Bronco, connects to the predicted win of the White Horse Broncos team led by Stidham in San Francisco, which hints at Pope Francis, who also rode a white Wrangler when he was in Philadelphia, which is why 2 times 2 times 7 days earlier, San Francisco 49ers beat Philadelphia. And 2 times 2 times 7 hints at the 49th prime number, and it's the 49ers. Okay, so you get the idea. Now I've explained this now. This is another truly profound paragraph here that clearly is indisputable that when the Broncos win, it'll be from God. Right? It can't be both. You can't say, oh, this is a really cool thing you've done here, and then the Broncos win coincidentally. If you believe that, you are a fool. This explanation that I've given here is from God. If you can't see that, if you think that I was creative enough to come up with this on my own, I feel sorry for you, because I know that you are being irrational. And why is that? Well, you've got something going on with your core belief of agnostic atheism that you are unwilling to change. You are refusing to change your religion. There's no evidence for God. Nothing could ever possibly be evidence. You think that this is from my imagination? I feel sorry for you. You are a fool. All right. I wanted to add this very interesting thing that occurred when Pope Francis was in Philadelphia. His time in Philadelphia was highlighted by this big concert. And here we have the Pope sitting on his blasphemous, supposed Peter seat type thing here. Okay? Here's the Pope, and he's at a rock concert, which is in itself a contradiction. All right? The representative of God does not attend a rock concert. I mean, anyway. There's no representative of God on earth, which is what the popes claim to be. Anyway, here we can clearly see a manifestation of the demonic realm that's the truth behind Catholicism and the Pope. Because what we have here is a clear depiction of Baphomet, the face of Baphomet. I'll get you another picture of Baphomet so you can compare here, but this is Baphomet. Okay, so here you can see this classic depiction of this face Baphomet, which is this figure that represents Satan. Okay, it's a classic thing in the occult, Baphomet. So you can see again Baphomet, and you can see that there's Baphomet right there. So it's just a spiritual manifestation. I mean, probably, well, I don't know. Maybe the person who designed this knew. Probably they did, actually. That they were emulating the face of Baphomet there. Because there's all kinds of secret demonic stuff going on behind the scenes at the Vatican, right? Including occult worship, etc. So the person whoever did this in Philadelphia, this display here, at the center of it all, I mean, obviously that's Baphomet, right? It's hidden, but like, what else is it for? Of course, it's for those who have the eyes to see that what's really going on with Catholicism and the Pope. Well, there's Baphomet right there. But in particular, this Pope. This is the Antichrist. All popes throughout all of history have been lowercase Antichrist, but this is the Antichrist, Pope Francis, right? All right. So this was in Philadelphia, which just serves to add further to the prophetic significance of the Pope's visit to Philadelphia and his departure, his last visit, his last day in America being in Philadelphia on this date 927, which hints at Daniel 927, the verse that describes the period of the Antichrist. But we're still just getting started here. The number 227 also hints at 22/7, which is the closest fraction to the number pi, 3.14. The Antichrist is described in Isaiah 31:4. The win in the Bible, the win of the San Francisco 49ers over Philadelphia on January 4th is 941 days to the predicted plane crash in the area code 314 involving the 49th vice president who is from San Francisco. It is predicted that her plane crash in the area code 314 will occur on a flight to the 31st state, and on this plane will also be the 40th governor of the 31st state, which hints at 314, the area code, Isaiah 31:4, and pi 3.14. The reason for this connection of 941 days is that 941 is the 4 times 40th prime number. This predicted plane crash and deaths of these two politicians will clear the way for the 44th president to return to the White House, which is what White Horse hints at also, that is located at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. He will be the vice president to Michelle Obama, the predicted 49th president, which is why the 49ers win connects to the predicted plane crash involving the 49th vice president, also a woman. The first female vice president and the first female president will be Michelle, the 49th president. So by the way, 314, the area code, is St. Louis. St. Louis is directly in the path of a flight between Washington and Los Angeles. Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris are predicted to be the running mates in 2028, and they will be flying back from Washington to attend Trump's funeral and then die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they're flying back to Los Angeles, the 31st state. And Gavin is the 40th governor. That's a 314 there. The area code is 314. They will die the plane is going to crash, is predicted to crash into Busch Stadium, a baseball stadium. And that's because of the burning bush in Exodus 3:14, another 314. And again, this is area code 314. And here's another thing. In Exodus 3:14, God replies to Moses after Moses asked him the question, what is his name? God replies that his name is I am. The Hebrew symbol for I am, the Het letter, is the exact same symbol for pi. So God says his name is the symbol for pi in Exodus 3:14, and pi is symbolized by 3.14. That alone is evidence for the God of the Bible. Speaking of there not being any evidence, supposedly, according to the agnostic atheist religion. But anyway, when this prediction comes to pass of the plane crash in the area code 314 into a burning bush, as in Busch Stadium, well, you'll know what to do then, which is, of course, to get on your knees and start crying, which is what you should do after the Broncos win. Okay, so this is very straightforward and obviously not from any human being's imagination, right? We have the 49ers win here, connecting to the date of the predicted plane crash. Well, obviously, when the plane crashes, you'll know that this is not from my imagination. It's not like the Broncos prediction for the Super Bowl, where you can go either way, but not when you know not when you have the explanations. But without them, yeah, okay, you could say, well, it was 12 to 13 to 1. The Broncos had a possibility of winning, and they won. So what? That's fair enough. But again, I've made my point already, but I'll say it again. These explanations prove it, and you are a fool to not recognize it. This paragraph here isn't actually connecting to the date of the Super Bowl. So we'll just move on here. That's a very interesting paragraph nonetheless, though. And it does also confirm the prophetic relevance of this 49ers Philadelphia game, which is what we talked about up here in this paragraph. Okay. Now, the date of the predicted plane crash on August 2nd, 2028, or that is the date, will be, okay. Outside the US, this date is 2/8 and 28. The number 28 is 2 times 2 times 7. And 227 is the 49th prime number. The San Francisco 49ers beat Philadelphia 2 times 2 times 7 days before the predicted White Horse Broncos team is predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco. And the San Francisco 49ers beat Philadelphia the 4 times 40th prime number of days before the predicted plane crash involving the 49th vice president, who is from San Francisco, which will clear the way for the return of the 44th president, the American Pharaoh, a name of a horse, to the White House, as in White Horse, as the Antichrist who rides the white horse in Bible prophecy. Now, if you're a little confused because I said Pope Francis is the Antichrist that will ride the white horse, it's just a metaphor. It's just symbolism. And there are two Antichrists. And so God is saying in his signs and connections and patterns here, this metaphor also applies to Barack Obama, the second of the two Antichrists. This paragraph summed up the prior two paragraphs together in one paragraph, as I just said. The second paragraph also confirms the prophetic relevance of the 49ers Philadelphia game, which connects to both of these dates now. Okay. The White House is located at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. The Denver airport is known for having the longest runway in North America at 4 times 400 feet. Prior to the Super Bowl, the Denver Broncos football team will depart for San Francisco from Denver International Airport. At the entrance to the Denver airport, the airport itself is symbolism for portal, for demons, along with Satan, the prince of the power of the air, as described in the Bible, hence the air portal. Okay, so the entrance to the Denver airport, at the entrance, is a giant statue of a Bronco horse that has glowing red eyes and is nicknamed Blucifer. I'll show a picture of Blucifer here. All right, so this is the famous Blucifer horse outside the Denver airport at the entrance. And it's very satanic, as you can see, obviously. And the height of a person probably comes up to about here. So it's a very tall statue as well. Okay, and these eyes, this isn't a product of photo manipulation. These eyes actually glow, like red. So it's demonic, clearly. And one of the things that makes the Denver airport a conspiracy theory in conspiracy theory circles is the fact that the man who created the horse died while creating it, after a piece of the horse fell on him. So a piece of the statue fell off and killed its creator during its creation. The Denver airport is known for its extensive tunnel system, because the weather is so bad there, to transport the luggage and fuel and stuff, the de-icing stuff like that. The whole airport has got a labyrinth of tunnels underneath. And so it's known for this. And this is symbolic of the bottomless pit and the portal through which the demons will cross over into the earthly realm. That's the Denver airport for you. Now, God uses records or extremes. So the record longest runway hints at the president, the Antichrist, who will be on the white horse, who will be at the 44th president, who will be dwelling at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's why the record longest runway, which is this satanic airport, Denver, is 4 times 400 feet long, which comes with this demonic statue of the horse, and also the tunnel system, and it's an airport, so it's portals to the bottomless pit. It's amazing. All of this is why the Denver Broncos are going to win this year's Super Bowl in San Francisco. Furthermore, again, the team will be flying from this Denver airport to San Francisco prior to the game. The Super Bowl in 2019 was the GOAT, greatest of all time, versus Ram Super Bowl, because Brady played the Rams. That pointed to the Antichrist in the prophecy of the 8th chapter of the book of Daniel in the Bible. In this chapter, the Antichrist is said to come from the north and the west. Rome is exactly due northwest of Jerusalem. This Super Bowl was the second only in which the winning team only scored 1 touchdown. The other time was exactly 50 years earlier, when the New York Jets scored 1 touchdown against the Baltimore Colts, which is a type of horse. Baltimore is Maryland, and Maryland was founded by Catholics, and that's why in God's signs it symbolizes Pope Francis the Catholic. Tom Brady began his career with games against the New York Jets and Baltimore, which is why he won his last Patriots Super Bowl in this game that pointed back 50 years earlier to the only other Super Bowl in which the winning team scored 1 touchdown, the game between the New York Jets and the Colts, the two teams Brady started his career with the Patriots. A touchdown is 6 points. The Patriots' win in this Super Bowl was their 6th Super Bowl win, and it was exactly 6 years to the very day after the Baltimore team won the Super Bowl in New Orleans in the 6+6+6 state. The final score in the 2019 Super Bowl was 3-13. And this hinted at the date 3/13, 38 days after the Super Bowl. 3/13 in 2019 was exactly 6 years, which is why in the Super Bowl, the only touchdown was the 6 points touchdown. So it was exactly 6 years after Pope Francis was elected on the date 3/13 in the year 13, which is why the Super Bowl was a 3-13 score. 38 days before this 6th anniversary of the election of the Pope on the date 3/13. And on 3/13 in 2019, 38 days after the 3-13 Super Bowl, a polar vortex or bomb cyclone storm set a record barometric low in the 38th state, where 5,000 passengers were stranded overnight at the Denver International Airport. Yes, in other words, that Super Bowl pointed to the Broncos winning this Super Bowl. I'll repeat that. We have 38 days after the 3-13 Super Bowl, the date 3/13, the anniversary of the 6th anniversary of the Pope's election. But on 3/13 in 2019, 6 years later, after the Pope, Francis, we have the record, and God uses records for signs, barometric low in the 38th state where the 5,000 passengers were stranded overnight, which is, night, demonic, bottomless pit at the Denver International Airport is in Portal, the 38th state. And again, it's the Broncos that will win in San Francisco, as in the anniversary of the election of Francis. Now, 2,520 days is a period of time that's described as being symbolic of the period of the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 9 in the Bible. And 2,520 days after the storm in Colorado on the date 3/13, on the anniversary of the Pope's election, this storm that stranded people at the Denver International Airport will be the date February 4th, 2026, during Super Bowl week, which is predicted to involve the Denver Broncos. This is like during the week leading up to the Super Bowl, where there's all these media events, and this will include the Denver Broncos. This is a prediction, because they haven't yet beaten the Patriots in the semifinals yet. Now, this February 4th date, which connects with the day of the storm in the 38th state, and again, the Broncos are from the 38th state. This February 4th date will be 4 days before the Denver Broncos from the 38th state are predicted to win the Super Bowl in San Francisco. Hence the anniversary again of the election of Pope Francis and all that. Pope Francis is predicted to be resurrected from the dead through demonic power on the 4th anniversary of his funeral. That's why the 4 days here. The demons will enter the earthly realm from the bottomless pit, as in tunnels at the Denver airport, after the door, which is symbolized by the 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, will be opened with a key, which is the symbol for the Vatican. This is amazing. And the key opening the door is part of the 5th trumpet Bible prophecy. This is an amazing paragraph here. All right? Again, there's absolutely no way that someone could have concocted all this information in his own mind, let alone then connect it to a prediction like the Broncos winning the Super Bowl. If you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you. But I have already told you what I need to say regarding that. It's irrational, and you are being a fool on purpose. It's your choice. The 2019 Super Bowl was 25 times 2 years after the only other Super Bowl in which the winning team only scored 1 touchdown. The score 3-13 hinted at the date 3/13 and the storm in the 38th state 38 days later. 313, 2019 is 2,520 days, which is what is hinted at with 25 times 2 months. Before February 4th, during the Super Bowl week, that is predicted to involve the White Horse Broncos team from the 38th state. So I've just tied it all together. I've summarized it again here, but I've also added the fact that we have this connection from the storm, right? Because the storm was connected prior to it with the Super Bowl, which was 25 times 2 years before the other Super Bowl, in which the only team which involved the Colts won the Super Bowl. In which the Super Bowl winning team only scored 1 touchdown. 25 times 2 years later, it was the Patriots. And then that game with the 3-13 score pointed to the date 313, which connects with 2,520 days. It rhymes with 25 times 2 months. And again, the day of the storm was in the 38th state, and it was 38 days after the Super Bowl. And then we get this connection to the prediction for the Broncos from the 38th state. Okay, now lastly here, the prophetic 7.0 earthquake near Whitehorse, Canada on December 6th, 2025 is 4 times 4 times 4 days before it is predicted that the Whitehorse Broncos, led by Stidham, number 4+4, will win the Super Bowl. Okay, so 4 times 4 times 4 days to the predicted win by player number 4+4. Now, the 444th word in the Greek concordance is the word for man. The reason why the Antichrist's number is 666 in Bible prophecy is that man was created on the 6th day, which is why the man-centered religion of Catholicism is the opposite of the truth and is Antichrist. The religion that is a hierarchy of men, in which you go into a wooden box and confess your sins, supposedly, to a man in order to be cleansed of your sins, supposedly. The man-focused religion. Anyway, 444, man. Well, also, that's why the 44th president is the second of the 2 antichrists. Now, so, this earthquake, the 7.0 earthquake near Whitehorse, connects to the Whitehorse Broncos with 4 times 4 times 4 days. And the winner of, or rather the MVP of the Broncos is predicted to be player number 4+4. The 44th president is predicted to return to the White House, which is hinted at with Whitehorse, the city in Canada, as the Antichrist who rides the white horse. At the time of the earthquake near Whitehorse, the Antichrist who rides the white horse was 4 times 4 times 4 years old plus 4 months and 2 days, which hints at 42 months in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist. The Whitehorse Denver Broncos represent the 38th state. And the earthquake near Whitehorse is exactly the 38th prime number of weeks before it is predicted that the 44th president will return to the White House on January 20th, 2029 at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's amazing. Again, the Whitehorse Denver Broncos represent the 38th state, and the earthquake near Whitehorse is exactly the 38th prime number of weeks before it is predicted that the 44th president will return to the White House, as in Whitehorse, which is at 4 times 400 Pennsylvania Avenue. Okay. You get the idea here. This is an amazing connection here too. And that is it for this video. God bless. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.